The Reef Therapy Podcast is powered by ICP Analysis. If you'd like to win a free saltwater ICP analysis kit and a freshwater analysis kit, all you have to do is leave a comment down below using the hashtag What's in Your Water. If you're listening to the audio-only version, head on over to YouTube and you can enter in the comment section there. ICP Analysis will test over 50 elements down to parts per trillion. These tests can also be used to see if there's any undesirable elements in your aquarium as well. Register your aquarium on the ICP Analysis app, fill your sample, place it back into the bag, slap on that included postage, and have your results 1 to 3 days after it's received. More at icpanalysis.com. Hey, Reef Builders, welcome to session 105 of the Reef Therapy Podcast, powered by ICP Analysis. Today, we welcome hobbyist and content extraordinaire from Top Shelf Aquatics, Mr. Blaine Shively, and Salem is here as well. So
what's going on,
be a good
everybody?
Podcast, I think.
Yeah, for sure. Thanks for having me. Appreciate you guys so much. Seriously, thank you.
Look at that studio. My gosh.
Not bad, huh? It's pretty cool.
That's Top Shelf money.
Yeah. I don't know if that's it, right? But hey, was lucky to be able to join the team, and we built this little space, and it's been really awesome ever since. It's been great to have a little area to kind of kick off videos, start videos, and all that good stuff.
Yeah. So we usually go around the table to start and just kind of get an update on everybody's tanks and what's going on. So before we dive into all things Blaine and Top Shelf Aquatics and what you guys have going on there, why don't you take us through your tank? We might actually get into some stuff here because I think you've had some things going on, right, Blaine?
Yeah, so I've been lucky enough to make a big move across the country. And when I made that big move across the country, I ended up losing a majority of my livestock. So I kind of ended up hitting the reset button. And when I hit that reset button, I wanted to go dry, right? I wanted to try and go a direction I haven't done before, but I wanted to try and be as clean as possible because I've always ran into, certain pest algae that's just kind of haunted me ever since, certain things that I couldn't get rid of. And so I decided let's go dry. So I currently set up a Reefer 425 XL G2 Plus. So that's the 91 gallon display. And I believe it's 20-ish gallon sump. So it's roughly 115 gallons in total system volume. Set that up right after I basically started at Top Shelf. So it was probably a month after that. And it's been quite the interesting battle. I've went through probably every kind of bad beginner, thing you would run into, right? You had huge diatom bloom, went through that. There was a little battle with dinos at one point. And then I ended up brought in a bunch of, this is where I think it initially came from, right? You kind of do the breakdown yourself. You're like, how does this get here, right? Because this was all dry rock, right? So I'm like, how did I get this? Because every frag that came in initially to the tank, everything was taken off plug, was completely clean, quote unquote. And when I got my snails, I ended up getting a shipment of snails when we received some snails. And I think there was a little bit of cladophora is what we ended up IDing it as. So I'm lucky enough to work at Top Shelf, so I can bring in stuff to the farm and I can be like, what is this? And what am I trying to go against? And so Corey, he ended up IDing it for me, and he ID'd it as cladophora. And so it's a turf algae, and it was quite the battle. And so I love going the natural way. That's kind of my method, has always been. But this time around, I ended up trying to get a bunch of urchins because that was what I thought in my mind that could keep up with something that thick and that close to the rock work. And snails really couldn't work through it because it was kind of growing at a pretty rapid rate. So I ended up getting some urchins, all kinds of different species, tried everything: long spine, tuxedo, short spine, Halloween, everything under the sun. And they just couldn't keep up with it. And so I ended up doing something that you mentioned earlier, Remy, that Salem might be interested in, but I ended up using reflux on my tank. So I ended up fluxing the tank. And when I fluxed the tank, I did the whole transition, right? Waited 2 weeks and ended up going for the algae at that point. But what I didn't talk about was the fact after the first night and the second night, I ended up losing pretty much all of my stony coral pieces overnight. pretty rapidly. It was pretty quick. And we're talking stuff from Top Shelf, right? Some really aquaculture strong corals that were doing just fine. No huge swings parameter wise, other than putting the reflux in, right? That was the one major swing, different change that I made. And so I lost some pieces overnight, ended up loose, but I ended up my euphilia. I have OG bounces, some other shrooms and things like that. Everything like that was fine. So battled that, but we're over that battle. Here we are now. We've kind of caught up, and I think we're starting to really get a foot underneath the tank. I laugh because I think you think of your projects, right? And the projects you don't care about and you don't think of, they do really well, right? They always do super good. So my nano tank on my desk, I don't think about it. I threw together the rockscape, just threw a bunch of macroalgae and soft corals, just kind of thought, oh, let's let it ride, have some mangroves in there, just kind of letting it do its thing. And it looks amazing. I put some bird's nests in there, some SPS. It's growing. It's got new growth on it. Got some Monty Cap on there. Like, it looks so good. And my tank at home has all the bells and whistles in the world. And, it's been a struggle from the start. So it's been interesting. Been keeping tanks a long, long time. But this one's been new and interesting and a little bit of a struggle for me for sure.
I'm interested to hear, because we had previously talked about this, and I know that Salem has some thoughts on fluconazole, which is what reflux is. And before you get into that, Salem, I kind of think it's funny now that I've questioned almost everything in this hobby because of Salem. This arbitrary kind of like wait 2 weeks for the fluconazole to set in the tank, and all the different like things that somebody made up at some point because it worked at for one or two people. But how much are we actually messing up the tank with this antifungal? But yeah, Salem, I'm interested to hear what you have to say about this. I think you have an experiment or something that you're wanting to try with this, right?
There's things I'm doing behind the scenes, as always. Okay, so how old was the tank at this time, and then how long had the pieces been in there? And it was predominantly SPS, or like what all died?
So I'm going for mainly a mixed reef, right? I'm kind of going for what, a lot of people would call a mixed reef, right? But I would say a little bit more SPS dominant, just due to the fact Top Shelf, which I have access to corals wise, pretty readily, is more of an SPS dominant place, right? They have a lot of sticks, a lot of really cool sticks. And I love the challenge. I've kept SPS tanks before, but I think the challenge of an SPS tank is always very fun and enticing. But I think a little bit of mixed reef involved in there too. I think that's always very fun too. I think that challenge of having a true mixed reef and maintaining it well and having growth on everything is very cool. The tank at that point. So I guess that was another thing too, where I think I was so excited about where I was and what I had access to. I kind of rushed, I think, probably, right? Like, I've been doing this for over 20 years now, or 20 years at this point, and I've still done this a couple times where I rush systems, and it always ends up happening. But I think I just had access to everything so readily. It was easy for me. I think a lot of places, local fish stores, I've loved going to growing up, but I've never been to something like this, right? Top Shelf's on a different level. So I had access to all this stuff. So I went with a little bit more SPS dominance. I'd say the tank at that point was probably roughly 3-ish months. I'd say probably 3-ish months when that cladophora really started to kind of take over. And then the pieces in that point had been there for a little over a week, I'd say, maybe almost 2 weeks at that point.
Had you introduced any coral prior to that point?
I mean, other than what was in there previously, it was just a round of SPS. Actually, it was like a round of sticks I bought. So I got a couple round of, like, I would say there was probably 5 or 6 pieces. And that was the first, other than a couple Monty caps I had, were the first SPS pieces I added into the system. I had some other success, obviously, with some other corals. And I was like, might as well try it.
Okay, so completely dry rock.
Completely dry rock. I ended up not getting any beneficial, like I did, bottled bacteria. I, obviously did
Which
that.
one?
I did Microbacter 7 or the Start XLM. Sorry, Start XLM. Sorry,
It's all
excuse
the
me.
same.
It's all the same. It's all the same.
It's all the same. Yeah.
Sure. I mean, for me, that's what we use on all of the installations we do. So that's what I used, just because I've seen the tanks we've set up. They look amazing afterwards. So I used it myself. I just was really trying to start it completely dry and fresh, I've done live rock mainly in my past, but I'll say the one thing that's always haunted me in live rock tanks, that I've never been able to escape, but this is my biggest tank I've ever kept as well, is Valonia. I can't escape bubble algae. That's the one thing I get on Live Rock from anywhere, and I just can't. I don't have a tank big enough to keep a rabbit fish, or maybe even a surgeon fish maybe has an enticement for it, but I just never had the ability to have a tank, I guess, big enough to do that. So I could have done it this round with the tank, around 100 gallons. I could have done that, but I've always struggled with that whenever I've introduced Live Rock or started with Live Rock. So I wanted to try it out. But it's been an interesting battle, but I'd say the first year in reefing, right, with anybody's tank, no matter how good you are with systems, I swear, I mean, every system's different, right? Everyone says this. It's like we beat this drum over and over and over again, but every system's different, and every system you set up is going to be different too, which is so interesting about this hobby. That's why I've loved it for so long, because it's always, you're constantly learning. I mean, every day you learn something new, every single day.
Did you any sand or bare bottom?
I did. I have sand. So I'm a sand guy. I love sand. I also like, some wrasses and things of that sort that will tend to like sand. I think aesthetically it looks a little bit better, just personally. I usually tend to have a little bit deeper of a sand bed. But so I do have a sand bed that I'm tank.
What sand did you use?
I use the Carib Sea Fiji pink and then the Reef sand. So I mixed the two.
Okay. The Fiji pink comes wet, right? Doesn't it?
They were both wet, technically. They were both wettish.
UV, yes, no.
No UV. I was actually, it's funny you say that, because I was listening to obviously I listened to all the episodes, right? But I was listening the other morning to your chat with Remy when he was getting ready to leave for Australia. And you talking about him, okay, yeah, no, don't do your water change and then turn off your UV sterilizer. And I actually, at one point, I did run a UV sterilizer that I bought off Amazon, cheap one. Right at the beginning, I had a terrible bacterial bloom. And I just thought, personally, I just felt it was in the fish's best health, just with how thick it seemed. I was like, I'm just going to get something on Amazon, run it really quick. Yeah, it seemed thick. It seemed like it was like chocolate milk, kind of.
Jello.
Yeah. And so I ran that, and as soon as it was done, I turned it off. And I haven't ran it since. I've kind of been a believer of not having a UV sterilizer in my tank, unless I know actively that I have, say I have a fish that I've loved for so long and it's introduced into the tank and it has ick or whatever, or it's been introduced, then yeah, I'll probably end up running a UV sterilizer on that system, knowing that I'm trying to continuously battle it, because obviously once you have it, you can't really get rid of it at that point.
Yeah.
But no, for this tank, I'm not currently running one. Ran a cheap Amazon one for a short period of time, just for a little bout. But other than that, that thing's been put in the trash, and I'm no UV on that tank.
Do you run ozone, and have you sent in any aquabiomics test?
No, that's something I'd love to do. Aquabiomics, if you're listening, please send me a test. That'd be awesome.
I'll text him.
Yeah, text him for me. But no, I think it'd be really cool. So that was one thing I actually considered doing at this point. Now, when I look at the tank, I'm like, oh, I'm having some success. I would really like to kind of evolve that microbiome level. I would say in probably the last 2 years of reefing for me has been something that I've really tried to kind of hone in on. Is, I think you're actually someone that's really kind of piqued my interest with it. You kind of prodded that I'm like, oh, more interested in the kind of micro, like, community that's going on in my system. It's important to understand that as well. So I'd love to do that. I would like to do that. I've also considered, grabbing some of their sand and then putting it in my sand bed actively, because I have a sand bed, so it'd be easy to mix in, and just to get their sand as well, just because I know it comes free of coral pathogens and things like that, I believe is what their website states.
Yeah, if you get their sand, something that I would do is I'd get a tub of dry sand. So dry aragonite that's not been wet, none of like the Carib Sea stuff. Add in their sand, and then add ammonia, aminos, and like a carbon source. And then you basically will inoculate all of that sand with that microbiome. Because if you just add, like, think about it. It's like if you just add that thing of sand to your existing tank, it's like you're adding a drop to a pool.
Yeah.
Right? All of the existing microbiome in that sand bed is likely to outcompete any of the good guys you're introducing, and then you've just wasted money. Mm-hmm. But if you take out a pound of sand to put in a pound of this now good sand you've cultivated, that's got a little bit larger effect on the microbiome. Now, in terms of the fluconazole,
Would you end up, sorry, would you
yeah,
end
no
up
problem.
would you end up cultivating that sand, you said, in the sump space, or would you cultivate that outside in a different system in your
Yeah,
own?
external, like think like 50-gallon drum, little like
Yeah, yeah,
Tupperware
yeah, yeah.
container, just
Mhm.
something sterile
Yeah.
that's not sterile water when you add it in, things like that. You can add aeration. There might be benefit to having an anaerobic space too, though, so you get diversity in that community. But that's something I would do. That's going to make the bang for your buck or your money go much further than just like the shot in the dark of maybe adding a little thing and it does nothing. So, um, yeah, fluconazole. So maybe you've heard me talk about it. Maybe I haven't. I've mentioned it maybe once or twice. So I've been talking about the bacterial side of things a lot, right? But there's a fungal side too. There's more than just the bacteria. And fluconazole is obviously an antifungal agent, right? It's used to treat yeast infections and things like that. So there's a lot of coral associated fungi that actually help regulate the entire microbiome, the holobionts of the coral. So theoretically, you wipe those guys out, you're going to have like a dysbiotic event happen much more likely to where you have like a pathogenic thing occur. That'll like manifest as like RTN or STN in the acros. So if you had the acros in the system for like a week, and presumably you already have a relatively scarce microbiome because of just you've used dry rock, you had UV at one point, the sand maybe you got a little bit in there, but you had no other SPS, so any of the microbes associated with SPS are not in the system. So you have been there for a week and then you nuke the fungi. Seems to make sense to me, but no one has done like a before and after looking at the fungal populations of fluconazole. So I think it'd be cool if you sent in. You'd have to send in the tank DNA test to Aquabiomics because they're a eukaryotic organism, so they're not going to come up on the bacteria microbiome one. But I kind of want to see what the fungal population looks like in your tank with the 18S test. That'd be cool
Yeah,
to see.
that was I was very interested, initially once that happened. And then seeing that obviously it was the stony corals that it ended up happening to. I was interested to know a little bit more about it. Like you said, that the tank was very new, so it being obviously the more difficult to keep corals, I had a little bit more understanding that I just nuked the tank. I feel like anytime I pour in a chemical, I poured in that fluconazole and it's like this powder snow that I added to this tank. I mean, I've done the coral snow before and I've seen the cloud in the system, but it was, kind of a little stressful. And then obviously the next morning seeing that, a little stress from some of the animals, it's tough, but in the end, it ended up winning me the battle. That was one
Yeah,
thing I was going to say was in the end, I did end up going in that 2 week day. I went in and I did a massive water change. And I mean, when I was going in with the hose, it was coming off, not even me trying to like pull it off. It was just like a vacuum pulling off like, hair off a dry, surface. It was impressive. I mean, it was clearing it off completely, but it was, I guess I kind of thought it was like this trade off, right? I was like, I lost these pieces, but in the end, I ended up dealing with this, but there'll be another battle here soon, anyways. I'm sure of it.
yeah. I mean, turf algae is so hard to deal with, dude. Like I had turf in one of my systems, and the only way was fluconazole. Like I used fluco, and it worked, but God, nothing else did. Tried
So
everything.
Corey, that was the big thing when I went in there and Taras too. All these guys in the farm, I'm very lucky to, that's something that, I've, always love asking people, whenever I end up doing videos with people, I always ask them, like, what's like one of your reefing tips? Jake always used to ask this, and any tank tour, I do it too. I even usually mention Jake, and it's like, I love one of the recent ones was have a reefing crew, like have a group of friends, just a group of people you can kind of bounce with. Me and Remy and Tyler, you know, inland underscore reef, we bounce with each other all the time, like talking about stuff. And it's nice to just have like an extra set of eyes on things. I think you get so asphyxiated on certain things, and sometimes you miss, or sometimes you overthink, or you don't try an idea. And it's cool to really kind of get in tune with all these other people. So it's nice to
Yeah.
have the farm, the farm, there's so many smart people, like it's crazy. So many smart people. And when I went in with the sample, I was able to be like, hey, what do I have? I ripped off a chunk, they put it under the scope, and immediately Corey was like, you can
Chlamydia.
do. He was like, you could. He was like, you could do one thing. He was like, you can do one thing. You can flux the tank, or you can just live with it, kind of.
Yeah.
And
It's
so
funny.
I
Sorry to
oh, no,
cut you
sorry.
off,
No, you're good.
but Blaine and I and Tyler, like you said, have a group
Chlamydia.
message, and I feel like Blaine and we started our Red Seas at about the same time,
About the
and
same time.
it's so funny that I chose the live sand
Mm-hmm.
route and all the bare bottom, and almost the exact opposite of everything that he did.
Seriously.
And I think the only issue that I really encountered was maybe that coral pathogen affected some of my corals early on, but I don't even know if that was it. But I'm also wondering, okay, so I've got this Hello Reef 15 gallon that I want to start, and then I've got the 65 that is still waiting to be started. But what if I just took the sand and I did the inoculation of new sand, and I actually just used the sand from the Red Sea in there? Would that, I mean, am I proliferating anything bad? Would it be good to get another aquabiomics test so that I kind of know where I'm at right now?
Yep.
Yeah,
Test.
because I'm doing therapeutic UV.
I love that. I love that
Dude.
concept.
Dude.
I do therapeutic drinking, so I mean it's very similar in concept.
Sometimes I open the bulb and I just put it on my face.
You just get a whiff.
Yeah, just a little
just
bit.
open your eyes as wide as you can.
Yeah, I think that the Reefing Crew thing is so important, and I realize that I'm lucky being in St. Louis, where we have 7 or 8 local fish stores, and they're good. Like I've got my favorites, of course, but like not everybody has that. Like I think of our friend Kalamazoo Reefer, who just got some top shelf corals in and just did a video on it, but he doesn't have a local fish store near him. He doesn't have a whole lot of friends that also do this. So
right.
if you could have even people from remote, like I talk to Telegram all the time, we're going back and forth on things, and if you can have a Reefing Crew to just bounce some stuff off of. Salem hasn't charged me yet, but every once in a while I'll text him for things. But that's so important, because you skirt all the marketing and all of that influence in the hobby, and you just go to like straight anecdotal. This is what worked for me. This is the results that I'm getting, and you can do that in real time. And usually, if they're good friends, they don't care if you're texting all the time and that kind of thing. And they'll even maybe share some personal stuff. So
Also interesting too when you have people with similar issues that have different outcomes with utilizing different methods. I think that's cool too, because then you say if you try something from one reefing buddy and it doesn't work, and then you try the next method, maybe that works. I don't know. It is nice to have a crew. I think it's very, very nice. This hobby it's very niche. I think it's growing all the time. I think it grew big time during COVID. But I think the the reefers, right? The people that really do love this hobby, love the animals. I think it is a tight niche, so I think it is cool to get a group of people together. And, I'd say I'm very spoiled with the people that I'm able to chat with and talk to. It's very nice, the group of people I've been able to surround myself with and get to talk to at trade shows, things like that.
Let's chat about. Sorry, Salem. Do you have a question?
No, you go.
Okay, I'm going to kind of move to a different subject
Yes,
here, but
go.
I just wanted to ask, because so with your job at Top Shelf Aquatics, you are the content guy. You're the guy that makes the videos. I don't know how much of it you're finding yourself, or if you're just kind of going to accounts, or making it at the farm, whatever. So I think my question for you, because I know that through tank tours that I've done at people's houses, I start to kind of notice some similarities of, what makes this reef keeper successful? What is it? Because we all overcomplicate things, and you go out on the internet and you find forums and they're all overcomplicated stuff. But I've always found that like simplicity wins. And I'm wondering if you've found some similarities in some of those. Like you've done some pretty awesome tanks in the past year or so, some phenomenal builds. So if there's any similarities that we can, any information that we can glean from that, what would you say?
Yeah, so I mean, obviously, my position at Top Shelf, originally I was hired on, and I am still hired on as the YouTube guy, right? I'm the content creator and do the content here. I'm lucky I have the farm, the retail store, and then obviously we do installation as well. So we set up tanks as well. We do custom builds and all that good stuff. So there's a plethora of really of content out there for me. You know, I'm lucky enough to be able to do it full time. But for me, you know, I think Jake did this before. I think it's always, you know, other people have done it as well on YouTube. I think being able to touch base with other reefers and make videos on their systems, like we talked about, you know, everybody's tank is different. So you can kind of learn new things from every single individual reefer. So it's cool to see that, but you do see similarities for sure. I think a lot of the tanks that I've checked out recently, I'm you know, they're bigger. I will say that a lot of them are bigger, and they're on a grander scale, but you can still bring down them to like core values, which is very interesting. You know, I think I still look at some of the tanks and I'm like, man, those are tanks that some people may never be able to have, but the ideas and what they do, the practices that they carry can work in their 10 to 15 gallon at home. I think the big one that reigns supreme, I think it's even big at Top Shelf, is stability. I think that one keyword, stability, is huge. Like it's people don't really realize how adaptive these corals are. Let's be real. We took them out of their natural environment anyways. We've shoved them underneath artificial light most of the time, and we're shoving food normally that is not what they normally eat, regardless of where the coral's coming from. The fish that are in the tank as well, you know, that excretion from those fish is not normally what those corals may be eating in the wild. I mean, you know, all these different variables, right? It's very interesting what we're able to do. But yeah, I think stability, though, is huge. Like being able to kind of hone in and keep your numbers at a solid level so that way they're able to kind of adjust if they need to. But if you make huge changes, then that's where things can kind of go awry. I think that's one of the biggest things is stability. Something that I've seen, which is, you know, I laugh because I've been reefing for quite some time now, but I see the resurgence, the rebirth of Kalkwasser. It's been reborn. It was never gone. We use it a lot at Top Shelf. We use the crap out of it. I mean, we use a lot of it in our tanks. I mean, we're using it to constantly buffer our pH throughout the course of the night. We have a certain formula we've created to be able to maintain that in all of our different systems with 30,000 gallons of aquaculture facility, right? So, I mean, we've utilized Kalkwasser in an extreme way. And a lot of the tanks that I've visited have almost all of them have utilized Kalkwasser, which is very interesting to me.
What's your target number at the farm?
For pH. We're shooting we like 8.3 to 8.5. That's like our we don't like to go too far up. I feel like because then you're playing with some the danger zone. I always kind of laugh. It's like I think of the song Danger Zone when we're trying to get these SPS to these peak numbers, right? And I see the guys at the farm and they're like in their helicopter mode with their Hannah checkers, and I'm like thinking they're playing Danger Zone in their head the whole time. But that is something that's so cool about it. Yeah,
you stink.
I think that's something that's really cool about, you know, this whole team here is it's like a high risk, you know, kind of system and setup, and you got so many smart people together. But yeah, Kalkwasser, we do use it here, but 8.3, 8.5 is kind of the pH number we shoot for, and that's what I've heard around. That's like another resurgence, I think, too, is people talking more about pH. I think the idea of pH kind of was big at the beginning, kind of fell off a little bit. I think lighting took over for a long period of time. The dominance of LEDs kind of took over, and I think that really piqued everyone's interest to talk about that. And I think that kind of outweighed the pH battle, I guess, so much per se. And I mean, I guess people were utilizing refugium still too at that point. We use fuges as well here at the farm. That's an old school. I actually was laughing because I wanted to do a video, Salem, actually talking about fuges, because there's been so much interesting conversations lately because of your article. And I've loved them because me personally, I've kept a lot of macroalgae based systems, actual macroalgae only. Like shout out Dennis, Tyga Boy.
Dennis.
He got me into it right originally from the start. Super unique style of reefing, very natural, very freshwater style. But it's cool. And I think it's honestly very challenging to be able to get the coloration and the look that you want and the growth out of this coral. And it's like, you know, it's bonsai in a way. You got to trim it all the time. It's cool though. But it was very interesting to see people kind of freak out over that article. But that was another
I've
thing.
got a fuge. I have a fuge.
Well, I think
Like,
you made mention to what it was, but people don't. It's like the people reading the tabloids, right? It goes
yeah.
right over their heads. It's
Yeah.
and it's like me when I think about my videos, right? People watch the first 30 seconds and hopefully they stay, but they don't get to see the next 19 minutes and 30 seconds that I worked all week on, right? Like, and it's
I don't
passionate.
like his mustache. I'm out.
Yeah,
See
I'm
ya.
out. I'm out. There's no curl. I'm out of here.
Stupid mustache.
It's so yeah, it's interesting to see how people react, right? But no, it's I would say once again, kind of rounding back again to your question, when it comes to people in their tanks and what's been consistent is stability. I've seen the use of kalkwasser, and then other than that, I would say there's been a lot of people that have been using a lot more automation. That's just huge now in reefing in this world today. You go to any tank, and I mean, you look at any tank, and some tank has some piece of equipment that's automated in some way, shape, or form at this point. So it's very new. It's very with it. I think it's kind of what's becoming norm. A lot of people want to be hands off too. I've seen a lot of the people that I've spoke with are people that don't really want to be hands on with the tank all the time, which I understand. I can get that to be able to enjoy the system, but I like being very involved with my tank, right? Like this love relationship that I have with my systems, right? Like, I like that hands on relationship, but some people don't. Some
Yep.
people want to some people just want to come home and enjoy the tank and just look at it and not have to worry about to feed it and all that good stuff. So automation, testers,
Yeah.
controllers.
To piggyback off of that word stability, that's the purpose for the automation, right? And I think when you first start off in this hobby, and this is something that I didn't really get when I first got into it, I was like, well, why can't I just like top off my system every day with RODI? Why can't I just hand dose everything? Why can't I just, do all the water changes myself? Why can't I just, and then it starts to impact how you maintain your tank, and then all of a sudden your tank is going like this. Every time you do a water change, you have nothing in your tank, and then you do a water change and then it's all back, and then or most of it's back. That's the stability number is so crucial. And I'd say number, I just mean like all the parameters, because as we've talked with Salem many times, instability creates that dysbiosis and can cause those coral pathogens to attack, and that's when you see the RTN or the STN or whatever the case may be, dying coral. So we're always reaching for that stability, and I'm doing the same thing right now. I started all for Reef, so I have been testing my alkalinity every day at the same exact time to make sure that I am not overdosing, my alk number is not going too high, and I reached it. I was at 9.7 on my DKH on my alk, and I've slowly been tapering the amount of milliliters a day so that I can get that nice even number. And I've just added a ton of SPS in here too. I can't wait to do a video update on the Red Sea because there's so much coral in here now. So that's also been playing with that number too, the consumption of all those major elements. So testing is so key. That's why the Trident and the Maven and all these new things are coming out. It's all for stability. That's all of it. So you get into these big giant tanks that you guys do tours on, stability.
Yeah,
That's why they have all of that equipment, is for stability, right?
I've worked in a ton of industries, and like human error is real. Like, let's be honest, human error is very real, and it's a thing. Is like, as much as I would like to say it's not, and like the AI takeover. Oh my gosh, like it's over, for everyone, kind of thing. But I think that automation and having smart involved into your tank is a good way to go. I think having that testing too, like, I mean, heck, if you don't have to test and you have some robot doing your testing for you, like, sheesh, that sounds great. Like, I'm all for it. I mean, yes, it does come with a price tag, right? Like, let's not deny that. Like, that's one thing I like to keep transparent with people, is like, you can't deny that that's going to come with a price tag, but it's nice to have. And a lot of people, when it came to the tanks that were doing well, stability, and a lot of them had Tridents, were utilizing Apex systems. I think Hydros is starting to make some waves recently. I think with the Maven coming out, interesting. I would love to see them, I talked with Carlos, briefly for a period of time about the Maven. I did a video on it. I would love to see it working, functioning, and seeing an ICP test backing right afterwards. I want to see them double up together, and I want to see them kind of put it to the test. And I told that to Carlos, and he was interested, wanted to make it happen. So, I mean, I think it'd be cool to see. Because that's my thing, right? Like let's put an that's what I like a little bit about Hydra is they put a little bit of accountability to themselves, right? Like that's what I want, right? Like if I'm going to buy a piece of equipment at X amount of dollars, I'd love for it to do what I want it's said it's going to do, and hopefully it does it within a reasonable range, right? Like obviously maybe it's not going to be at an ICP range, right? Like let's be honest, right? Like it may not. There's some room for error in between that comparative machines, but if it can kind of stay within that range, I mean, it'll be interesting to see what it can kind of do.
Yeah. How big is it?
I know this is well. I look at it and because it had the two, which was also nice about the Maven. Not plugging Hydros at all. We sell it at Top Shelf Aquatics if you want to snag it, but it is you can test 2 tanks on it at some whenever this does come out. You can test 2 tanks. So say if you do have, like say if you have a grow out tank next to it, you can test the grow out tank. Say if you have, I don't know, you can open it up for some interesting things. I think Hydros is interesting in the fact of how expansive they just really are. I mean,
yeah. And it's got a brain too, right? So you don't need
it does have a brain. It could be it by itself that you can run the Maven alone. The Maven alone would be a controller technically. But it is kind of cool to tie things together and have like the quote unquote ultimate failsafe, which is kind of nice. One thing fails, next thing kind of picks up the pace. It's nice. Maven though, interesting for sure.
You customize the light colors of the Hydros.
You can change the light colors. I've asked about that.
Man.
I asked about sorry, Carlos and the whole team. I asked about turning them off. I mean, that's all I asked.
Yeah, that's why I kind of asked. I was like, maybe like a cool white.
Everyone, I've
white.
seen it. I've seen it all over. You can do that. Yes, that is the thing.
Open up the cabinets like.
you guys are trying to put me in the hot seat, with
pineapple sponges are like. I just see a little Finding Nemo episode down there with all the gear.
The one Tang that you sent down there, he's just by himself.
I mean, turn it on for when the family comes over and everything, and they're like, open up the sump. Like,
no, I know what I'm doing. Like, have the pong table in front of the sump. Like, there's some ambient lighting there.
Yeah. Yeah, that's So stability, you'd say, is the overarching kind of, which I feel like we all kind of knew, but I think the nuts and bolts of stability are a whole different ballgame, right?
If you go back, you can watch all these tank tours. I ask every single person at the end of every single tour. Jake Adams did it, and it's something that I truly do. And it's like, I'm sure we were going to get into this at some point, but I really looked up to that guy for so long. And I'll never forget when he and I met, and we were in the studio, and and he told me, like when he saw my original channel, it was kind of like, it felt like this, like little bit of a passing of the torch kind of thing. Like, hey, like you can do this too. Like, I'm not here to, bring you down. Like, I want to support you as well. And so it was cool to hear that. And then I just kind of wanted to carry that tradition where, like, what's your tip, right? At the end of each video, I ask them, I'm like, what's your tip for a new reefer, even an advanced reefer, right? We can always learn new things all the time. And a lot of the time, one of the other things is people always say, take your time, right? Like these tanks, I joke, right? Rome wasn't built overnight, and neither were these systems. Like that's what I always tell people when we walk into the farm, because people are in awe and they're like, "Man, I would love to have a tank that looks like this." And I'm like, "This back row has been here for 10 years." Like it's like these things take time. Like it's not, you don't just get a tank overnight. You can technically, try and manufacture that in a way and speed cycle things, but to get a really truly developed system in a diverse tank, like it takes a lot of time. So time as well, I would say, is a lot of these tanks so that's what I mean, is a lot of these tanks I've visited have been older. I have been to a couple 2-year-old tanks that are very nice. But but a couple other ones, 7 years old, 4 years old, 5 years old. I just recently went and saw Joe Tusi. Shout out Joe Tusi, awesome guy, 20-year-old tank. Like
Yeah.
talking about tank.
Those,
We're talking
man,
about
those
a
tanks.
17-year-old sand bed that he's
Yeah.
like I got he's this Italian guy. He's like, I got nefarious snails. They turn it over. Like that's all I need. Like I
Yeah.
loving it, and like it sold me at that point because I was like, man, I really would love to get more turnover in my sand bed. And that night I was kind of like go buy 100 nefarious snails and call it good. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like that's what he does. He has like 60 of them in there, and they just it's the zombies come up and sift the sand. But no, it's cool. I love it. It's awesome to be able to meet these other like-minded reefers and see their tanks, get to know them, and then shout out to all of them too for letting me into their homes. Especially normally, I'm not going to say that no women have been on the tank tours, but all the wives that allow me to come into the home, and berate them with questions and all the camera gear. But
Yeah.
it's really awesome to be able to check out all the tanks and get to learn from all these different reefers.
For sure. I was going to ask, Salem and I were kind of joking yesterday, or maybe it was today, about how you get to play in Willy Wonka's chocolate factory for a living.
Yeah.
And, I've been to TSA several times now, and every single time I'm just like, gosh, this place is just, and you see it every day, so it's totally different. But what are some of the tactics that you've taken home from TSA to use on your own reef, or maybe things that you didn't realize, because you've been doing this for a couple decades now. You've been in the hobby for a while. Is there anything that when you got to TSA they're doing differently and now you've adopted that?
Man, I think you hit it right on the head with the Willy Wonka concept. I think I also, because we're in Florida, right? I call it Disneyland, right? I say it's the Disneyland of reefing because it really is. It's insane.
In Florida.
I'm new. I'm new.
And you're from California.
And I'm from California. Well, no, I'm not. See, I've been all over the place. Regardless, it's crazy. I mean, every time I walk in, today I walked in, there's one of the immediate tanks, and as soon as you walk into the farm, is called Pick Tank. It's where a lot of us shoot photos, videos. It's Pick Tank. Awesome.
Is that the one to the right, or is that
to the left? So you have Taras. If we're walking in, right, we're walking in Taras's crazy facilities are right to the right, and then to the left is Pick Tank and some of the quarantine systems for the fish. And so, just today I was walking through Pick Tank and I saw these hammers that had been in a sump space somewhere that Kevin was hiding. Kevin, by the way, is one of the co-owners of Top Shelf Aquatics. If you don't know, he's the coral farm manager. He's the coral whisperer. He's the coral hoarder. And so he had these hammers that were hiding, I guess, but they were beautiful. They were like these purplish, like lavender stalked hammers, like more of the Australian style with like the jelly bean kind of, head to them on the polyp. But they had like a light pink to them. Really nice. Two of them. That's it. Just two random frags. Hadn't seen them in the farm before till today. And I'd been here, almost for a year. I asked Kevin, I said, how long have you had those? He's like, I don't know, a couple of years. Right. So it's like, these are things that are constantly, you're getting to see. It's really cool. So, I'm very lucky. I'm super, super, super lucky. I tell Steven all the time, thank you, so much for letting me do what I do. It's cool. I was driving boats, working for a fisheries commission, and then I got a call one day, and now here I am doing YouTube full time for them. But when it comes to like the reefing and what I've taken home from them, I think one of the biggest things that I've taken home from Kevin especially is using certain foods as tools, utilizing them as like weapons in your reef tank, looking at your numbers and utilizing them as kind of like weapons. So like I look at Reefroids and I look at Benepets as my two big players in that game that we utilize a bunch at the farm. Shout out to both Benepets and Polyp Lab. But we utilize Reefroids when it comes to if we have lower phosphates, if we want to get a big feeding in, let's hammer it home with some Reefroids and let's juice up the phosphates, right? Let's raise some of our nutrients up. Let's get the party started, right? And then if we're looking at a tank that we need to feed all these corals, right? We have so much livestock. so much livestock in these tanks, and they need to eat, right? They got to eat. I mean, they're photosynthetic, yes, but with how big they are, how many are in the systems, the body of waters, like they got to eat. So we utilize benepets in that way, where if we have higher nutrients or higher phosphates, we can hammer benepets and we don't have any raise in those, in phosphates or in our nitrates. So it's nice to be able to kind of learn in that way. Like you can still feed and you can still make sure everyone's happy, but you don't, you play with your tools. You use what you have, at your discretion, right? And especially, like the live phytoplankton too is awesome. Seeing that. Yeah. I wasn't a huge proponent really on live phytoplankton, was never really my game. Reef genetics, let's go. Shout out to Ross, really. Ross has turned me on to it. Reef genetics, the line that we have is great. The 3 different strains, the red, the gold, and the green phytos, like all 3 of them are awesome. I've started to use them in my tank and I've seen a difference, I think personally. And I know that I always have a great pod population and I have a pair of blue striped pipefish. So I'd love to keep them happy. So no, I think there's some tools and things that I've learned here that are very helpful for me. I think also just kind of like a reminder again to myself to try out Kalkwasser. I've never done it myself. I've always done fuges. I'm like been wanting to do it. I've ran it technically helps run it on certain systems that I've helped put together, but I've never personally ran it. I've never
missing out.
I know I've never needed it technically. The one time that I thought I needed it when I had an SPS more so dominant tank, I was running a hose outside to my skimmer, and I was up in Seattle and I was pulling in crazy, good air. I was, middle of nowhere, and it was the freshest air possible. And so I had no problem with pH issues at that point. So I don't know. It's interesting though, for sure. That would be something that I'd like to try out for sure, bringing that home. But I think overall, I think being more committed to your tank, like when you meet these people, they're so committed to the animals and so committed to the coral, right? Like obviously we're a business, right? But at the end of the day, the farm team is the team that's curating these corals, raising them up and being able to get them out to you. And they're the people that are they really do love these animals. Like, I mean, it's a passion of theirs. Like it really is. I mean, you can go in there, talk to any of them that are in there, right? And you can just go on for hours with them. Like they just could talk about it for hours. And it's cool to see that kind of, passion when you work in a space. Like that's one thing I've loved is like just the passion for it.
Yeah. I was going to ask because I think a lot of reefers don't have the luxury of being able to work with other reefers.
Yeah.
So the significant others get an earful of things that they don't really care about.
Right.
Does your significant other, does she support you in the hobby? Does she like the tank in the living room, or?
So it's actually funny, right? So let's take a trip back memory lane. So if we think about what originally got me onto the YouTube scene was King Tide Corals was my original channel. And I was obsessed with setting up nano tanks. I love nano tanks. I think nano tanks are awesome. I think having a little space to get really up close and personal with your tank is very cool. You're obviously limited in what you can do in nano tanks, but I think they're very cool and they're very difficult. I think when you have a larger volume of water, you get a little bit of play sometimes, whereas in nano tanks, you're kind of limited to what can go right and wrong. So at one point, I had like 12 nano tanks up and rolling, and they were all shoved into an office space. Like just go into the office space and don't let me see the blue light of day ever. And that worked out for a while. And then she realized that obviously this was becoming a little bit more serious. Like at first it was kind of a joke, right? I really was setting up my phone like, oh my gosh, like let me make a YouTube video. Like this is so goofy. Shout out to you, Remy. I say this to you every single time. People, you're always like, oh no, dude, it's not like that. But it is really like this. People can hear this at home. But I didn't know Remy personally, and now I consider Remy as one of my really good friends. But I was listening to here we are, podcast again. I was listening to a podcast late at night. I don't even know what podcast it is at this point, but you were talking about reef keeping, and then YouTube came up, and you were like, just pick up the camera and do it. Like the hardest thing is starting. And I like had watched your channel for so long, and I was like, you know what? I was like, it was like he was talking to me. I was like, this guy, and it was midnight, and the missus is asleep. I'm laying there, and I'm like, this guy's talking to me. I'm gonna set up a camera tomorrow. And so I did. I set up my phone, and I remember setting it up and making a video, and then shooting you a message, I think afterwards, and even saying to you like, hey, like I started my channel, like yada yada yada, and you had this concept of like doing this like, oh, new YouTubers, incoming YouTubers. And I laughed because I actually watched that video a couple of weeks ago. It came up on my feed, and I'm still doing it, right? I'm doing it now full time, which is crazy to think. Like it's so wild. But I'm very lucky to have, Mace along the ride with me. She's been a huge supporter through the whole thing. I mean, I wouldn't have been able to do it. I moved everything across country to come and do this, right? Like I dropped everything in California, and I was like, no, let's go talk in front of a camera about fish tanks. Like, let's do it. It sounds so awesome. Like it's a dream come true, like yeah. I'll never forget. This is one thing I wanted to mention was I feel like in hobbies, you sometimes have these people that I'm not saying I want to be that person, but like you look up to, or you've met, and you're like, wow, I'm trying to have a tank like them, or, and I'll never forget the first fish store I ever walked into was Official back in Reno, Nevada. And Larry, this guy had, it's probably why I wear a polo today, but he had a Hawaiian shirt on. He had probably half the buttons undone, and all of his chest hair was out. And
dude, I've seen Larry before.
Probably
not your Larry, but Larry.
A Larry, right?
A Larry,
and
like
so
that.
I'll never forget my mom. I forget, she might have been in the laundromat or somewhere, and I, ducked out, and I went to this fish store because I was like, oh, that sounds so cool. I want to go to a fish store. Like, always wanted to fish. I was 7, and I remember walking in, and Larry looked at me. He put his arm around me. He goes, you want to see something cool, kid? And I was like, yeah, of course. And he takes me back into the coral flats, and this is when halides were huge. And so he had these crazy structures that were hotter than the sun, and I was like this little kid underneath the 4 sunbeams, and there was these like 2 gigantic clams and this just rows of coral, and I was just amazed. I was blown away by the colors, and I was like, oh my gosh, like where, I think I even said like, where are the goldfish, like where's the freshwater, I didn't know as a kid. And he was like, I remember him saying, if you want to be cool, you'll keep a saltwater tank. I'll never forget. He's talking to a 7-year-old kid, and he said this. He's like, if you want to be cool, you'll keep a saltwater tank. And then that next week I came back, and I like asked him a bunch of questions, got really interested in it. My mom came over, and at that point, she sees me talking to old Larry. She's like, I got to introduce myself to old Larry. She meets Larry, and I guess Larry and her talked, and I ended up mowing a bunch of lawns. They struck a deal and got me a 30-gallon tank for a really good price. Shout out my mom, Mama Judy. But that was how I started it all. And so like Larry, I always think of Larry. Like Larry was the guy that got me started. Like he was so cool. And that was like kind of you with YouTube for me. But it's like, I've always wanted to just be able to be that for someone, someone to look up to and be like, man, like I can do that. Like, let's totally do it. Like, why can't I have a saltwater fish tank? Like this guy with a mustache has one. Like, why can't I, kind of thing? Like I don't know. It's just, that's for sure been like one big thing.
Yeah, that's awesome. A lot of people don't know this, but I got Salem into microbiology. So
I could believe that. I could believe it. Radio and microbiology.
Yeah.
Yeah, he really did. I was confused. I didn't know what class I wanted to take. He said, well, why don't you try the sciences? And I did, and I really liked it. So I have Remy to thank for everything.
I mean, that's how I am with YouTube. So.
I said,
shout out Remy.
You should do theater. You should do theater or biology. I mean,
and I said, I can't act.
Never say never.
Never say never. Are you guys working on any projects right now at TSA? Anything that you can talk about? That
a bunch. Well, actually, one big one that I'll talk about right now. We just launched it. It's called Build Your Reef. So this is something that Steven my boss has been super, super proud of. I'm proud of it. The whole team's super proud of it. So basically, it's a coral subscription, right? So we've seen this before. It's been done in the past. But in the past, you haven't been able to have the opportunity to select the things you want. Normally, you get sent a package with X corals and X things, and that's just what you get. It's your subscription, it's your box, it's your bark box, right? In the shape of corals, right? So we kind of wanted to revisit that idea of a subscription, but give the power to the people once again, right? Give the power to the reefers, right? So we created Build Your Reef, which is basically a 3-tiered system where you can pick 3 different subscription levels. I'm sure Remy, you'll probably leave a link down in the description. You guys can check it out, but super cool where there's, I'm going to give you guys the 3 different ones. There's Coral Cadet, which is going to be like your $99 value. There's your Marine Master, $200 value, and then your Reefer Royalty, which is like $300 value, right? So you're going to get a credit-based system. So depending on whatever subscription you end up grabbing, you're going to get an X amount of credits, right? So you can utilize these credits for active products that are on the website. So these are like non-WYSIWYGs, some WYSIWYGs as well, and all kinds of cut to orders too. But what's really cool is you can actually grab some dry goods too. So we're not limiting to you just corals. You get dry goods. And then we also have all of our aquaculture live feeds. We're working on potentially getting some aquaculture inverts on there too as well. So it's a work in progress, right? This is a fresh new project for us at TSA. But it's been really cool. The feedback we're getting from some of the new members has been great. They're really liking it. We gave Remy the opportunity kind of to play around with it. I think it's been an awesome chance for people to kind of get more of a streamlined answer to what they really want to fill their tank with. And then also get, I think that's something too, where some people don't have, like you mentioned, you don't have an access to a Top Shelf Aquatics. You don't have an access to a really great local fish store in your area. Say you don't, right? And so this is an awesome opportunity to support us at us as a local fish store, Top Shelf Aquatics, and you can get on a subscription, right? So every single month you're getting corals coming out to you. So it's like you going once a month to your local fish store, right? And picking out a couple new awesome frags, and it's you doing it and picking out some really nice aquaculture pieces, right? So that's one thing I'll, hammer home once again, Top Shelf Aquatics. Like a lot of this stuff has been aquaculture for over a decade, right? We're talking about some stuff over 2 decades more, right? So, I mean, it's really hardy, awesome corals, great stuff. And there's opportunities to grab some really nice high-end stuff too. So what's cool about the subscription too is you can roll over your credits, right? So say if you don't spend them in the month of, we'll say the month of May, you can end up spending them your next month, right? So pretty nice. I've really thought it's been great. It's a cool chance for people to kind of get it on a coral subscription. I think it's cool. I've always loved that idea, but what's always kind of been the fear for me is I don't want people to pick corals that I don't really like. Maybe there's a certain species or group that like really isn't my style. I just don't do well with them. I don't know, whatever it may be. I don't, vibe with them. But I have the chance now with the Build Your Reef subscription to kind of pick your own. And so it's kind of been a really fun project going on for us. So I'd say that's like our biggest new current project we have rolling right now at TSA.
Salem, have you ever done a coral subscription before?
Have you done any kind of subscription?
Dude, I'm on the college budget, like the ramen prescription. Like, yeah, like, no, that sounds cool though.
I think
might
so.
Be interested.
So here's my thing with it, right? Subscription's a very scary word. I think when it comes to a lot of people, right? I think you get this idea of like you getting trapped into a subscription, right? But I think you have all the opportunities to leave if you say so, right? But I mean, it's a lot of awesome things that you're already grabbing anyways. Like if you're thinking about the dry goods side of thing too, like let's think about the food that you're already picking up anyways. You could be buying it at a fraction of a price and you could save it technically and save dollars in your wallet at home. So I don't know, there is a way to look at this. Me personally, when I view it, I looked at myself when I was reefing at your age, right? When I was reefing in college, I know I say that like I'm old, but I'm a few years out of school. And when I was in school, it was tighter to be able to reef. I remember having a reef in my my resident assistant dorm room that I wasn't supposed to have, I had. And it was a Reef on a budget. It really was. It was running some really cheap stuff. And the struggle was buying those little things that I didn't, buying the filter floss, like getting all these things. And I'm like, oh man, I got to buy that again. Like I was really hoping to go and get, some drinks and dinner with the buddies, right? You know what I mean? Like, the normal college things, right?
It's one thing I like about
There's a trade-off.
Yes, there is a trade-off.
This program is nice because of the credit system. I think is huge. I've done subscriptions in the past where you just kind of like, is it LPS? Is it SPS? Is it Softies? Which one do you want? And we'll send you, whatever. And I can't tell you the amount of like Monopora, what's the super fast growing one? Spongotes.
Spongotes. Yeah.
Just like
I was gonna say
taking
that
over. Just all the stuff that like it was bread and butter and it was fine. Like, but I think giving the choice to the person that's going to be taking care of that is probably your best bet on that. And I will say this too, any reefer who tells you that it's too expensive, like these subscriptions are too expensive, I dare you to add up how much you spend on your reef per month. It's 30 here, it's 40 there, it's 70 there, it's 10 here, it's 15, and then all of a sudden you're up to this price and you're already spending that anyway. So
I say that I issue the rollover. That's good too. I like how they roll over.
Yeah,
that's awesome.
I say this with confidence. I went ahead and I set up a cart with some of the more basic corals that we have at Top Shelf, and then corals from the BYR credit system. And I did a similar cart, and the BYR credit style, if you're going shopping for corals and you're going to be buying more in the end subscription style, it's kind of like a no-brainer. So I think it's cool. I think it's a great opportunity for people. It's something that hasn't been marketed enough. We're going to working on that for sure, but definitely very unique and a cool addition for sure.
I did it. You'll be able to see some of the corals that I got
I'm excited.
In the next video. But the other cool thing is I also got some Dragon's Breath, and I also got some of Terras's live feeds.
There you go. So that's what's nice, right? It's a mixture of things. And I think you also nailed it too. It's not just for beginners. I think that's something that subscriptions can be an issue about, is that you do ward away the more experienced reefers, just because most of the time a subscription, normally for some reason it weighs in my mind that it's going to be like more beginner intermediate things. Whereas for us, we have, and the other amazing thing I didn't even mention is that every single month the catalogs change. So it's not the same catalog. So it's a new catalog every single month. So it's fresh shopping every single month. So you're not stuck shopping, obviously, the same things over and over and over and over and get repetitive. So it's a fresh new catalog every month. And there's a lot of WYSIWYG pieces that we have that you would actively see on the vault at our website, at Top Shelf.
Yeah. And as Salem, as your graduation present, TSA is going to gift you a subscription. So
what? No way, really? That's awesome.
I'll talk to the boss. I'll see what we can do.
Shit. I'm so happy.
I think he bought it.
I think he bought it, and
I set this up in advance. I'm so happy.
I think just the recording of this and that pure excitement will get the boss on board.
Yeah, wow. I'll clip it. I'll send it to Steve.
He goes, wow.
Wow. I was like, I'm going to get free coral. That's the best graduation gift.
Salem, send me your address, not now actively on the podcast, so everyone here knows where you live.
Dox myself.
Yes, but we'll send it to me, and we'll get you hooked up from Top Shelf.
Okay,
sure.
That sounds great.
It's somewhere in Topeka, Kansas.
That's all.
in a lab deep far away.
Yeah, the only person that's receiving any coral shipments, they know where you live. So
yeah, pretty much.
So we talked about Build Your Reef. I think the last time I was there, Taras had just started building the Aptasia farm. How is the Aptasia going? Is it
awesome? So it's funny. I would say.
And why would anybody want to have an Aptasia farm? You can also answer that question for the people that may be wondering.
So we provide Bergia nudibranch to the hobby, and so Taras actively aquacultures them in house. And he is really, really good at it. And the culture that he has, he calls them wolves. They're not. They're not
pack of wolves.
They're not really nudibranch. They're actually wolves, because these things eat that's the thing that's very impressive with these creatures when you look at them, the sheer size of them, but how they eat and how they interact with one another and how they eat, like they do hunt in a pack. It's interesting how they work. They're very interesting creatures, but Taras has done an amazing job at culturing them. I don't know the secret. He does, other people do within Top Shelf. I don't. I'm sure they don't tell me because I'm the guy that goes on videos, right? I would probably spill the beans at some
You just
point.
got to try to kill them. I think that's how you get them to proliferate.
They've unlocked some secret with them though, where we're getting some very great success growing them, and so we're getting to the point where we're needing to almost source Aptasia, like actively source it from like locals and like other people, just because I mean we can't grow it fast enough, and we have
Just go to Petco
and we
or
grew, oh shit, we grew. You know, we set up a whole grow out, right? And I mean, it is full of Aptasia, and you still can hear the stress sometimes in Taras and worrying about feeding his wolves, because they will go hungry. They will go hungry. It's like a Stark, you know. He's like one of the Starks, right, from Game of Thrones, but he's riding on the back of a giant feathered wolved
Gosh, that's a
nudibranch.
t-shirt. That is a
It is.
t-shirt.
It is. No, but the nudibranchs are very cool. That setup's amazing. I've been having to tell everybody that comes now, I'll probably have to tell you as well, we can't film in a certain area anymore because we've set up a tiered system where it's like a grow out for them. It's really awesome. Kevin's gone all out with this one. Like, he's really smart and I think it's obviously due to how long he's been doing this kind of stuff, but with all the other people too as well. The plumbing, how the system's set up, Taras's smart mind for the critters as well. The system's super cool. So they've been killing it on culturing them out. And so, yeah, we send those out. They're great for Aptasia control. They really are. And then I kind of look at them as a file fish. If you're able to collect them, give them to a friend if they have Aptasia as well, because they'll munch through them as well. Because I mean, they work through them quick, like
sea
fast.
hair. Yeah,
kind of like a sea hair. Yeah,
the loaner
like
program.
Yeah, exactly. Kind of like the loaner program. The problem is they're pretty quick, fast-paced lives, and they've got pretty fast reproduction cycle. So you'll end up probably most of the time when you add them in, you'll have almost a full cycle of other babies go through. Like at that point, if you have a full Aptasia, full tank. So it's interesting. I sent one out to my mom. She had a couple Aptasia, pretty bad Aptasia problem in her little 10-gallon. I sent a couple out. She didn't see them. They were tiny, right? And that's the other thing a lot of people don't understand is they come in, they're very, very small. They are tiny little creatures. But they can get very, very big, very, very fast. They'll find the small Aptasia to eat, and they will eat them, and then they'll slowly work their way up. And so at some point, my mom called me in a panic because she had some creature in her tank that was crawling around on the glass, and she's trying to FaceTime me. Mind you, she's in her 60s and she's, trying to catch the critter. And finally I see it. It's one of the nudies, but it had grown substantially, had been eating quite a bit, but it was feathered, right? It's got their feathery back to them. And so she was freaked out. She's like, I didn't put it in my tank. I'm like, you actually did. At one point you did. So it's cool to see us be able to kind of provide those to the hobby. I think there's been a couple other people that have been able to provide them, but to be able to see it with my own two eyes that we are actively aquaculturing them in here in-house, and they're legit and they're hungry. I mean, like, I promise if you do have Aptasia, they're an awesome way to control them, depending on what you have in your tank, right? If you got wrasses, I mean, it's all dependent, right? It really is all dependent on each system, right? I've seen recently from Top Shelf, we, have at times, I'm not going to say that they're best for every single system, but stripies, Australian stripies, they will munch up Aptasia. They will munch it up. But if you have some meaty LPS coral, they might eat that too. So, so that's like, yeah.
I know you're going to find this hard to believe, but we saw a lot of Australian stripies in
Australia.
So yeah,
you saw a platypus, right? That's like my favorite animal ever.
Yes. Yeah. Platypus. His name was Sam.
Did you ever figure out, still kind of been weighing on my mind ever since childhood, multiple platypuses? Platypi?
Platypi?
Gyra. Obviously. Platygyra.
Those are
They-
so
I guess,
underrated.
I guess what so we talked with one of the reptile keepers. I forgot his name, but he was awesome. He walked out of the back of the back of house of the zoo and looked
Crikey.
exactly like an Australian zookeeper.
Yeah.
Everything, the
Sorry,
whole
sorry, mate. Just wrestling around with the crocodilians in there.
Exactly.
It's getting a little crazy.
Yes, it was awesome. So he said that they tried to put a female in with Sam, and he didn't
Rejection.
like it. Yeah, rejection. So, but
Wow.
dude, they're weird.
Hey.
They are weird. But I was happy to see one.
Awesome.
They also had
Poison
Tasmanian devils.
poison little toes and like flippers and beaks. It's like
They
whoever made them, right? I'm not saying any person did or whoever did, right? But whenever that
Fight in
was
the
created,
comments.
yeah, right. Whoever created that, it was the roulette, and they were just hitting the button randomly and just boing, 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 boing.
Lays eggs. Like,
Lays, yes, this is lays eggs.
Yeah,
Why not?
Why
Let's put it in Australia. It'll be fine.
we got to see a Tasmanian devil.
Oh, nice.
It was funny because like you go to a zoo in America, and
No
I feel like
thylacines, right? No Tasmanian tiger sightings down there.
they're totally real. They're still alive. Don't get me started, man.
No, I don't try. I know I shouldn't get you started on that, but I
if
could
you go
agree.
to
It's real.
if you go to a zoo in America or any aquarium too, like at the St. Louis Aquarium, we have like the Mississippi River fish, and it's like cool, awesome. But that's all I wanted to see was the Australian animals because I don't think we have a ton of them here.
No,
Obviously
their
wallabies,
biodiversity is
kangaroos.
really interesting. Their biodiversity
Yeah.
is just very, very unique. It's something that's always piqued me as a kid. Like it's just so crazy. Like all of it, right? I mean, you go all the way from land based to the Great Barrier Reef too, as well, right? Like you have like all these, kangaroos, wallabies, all these things, right? Like you were just saying, and then you go and then you have like one of the most amazing reefs ever.
I mean, it's an island, right? It's like the same thing as the Galapagos. how
True.
there's-
Same thing with Hawaii. Hawaii was very,
Yeah.
very, when there was all the endemic species, at least at first. But
Damn.
Damn.
Rip.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Humans-
it's a giant
humans.
island. Humans.
Humans.
Yeah.
what we
God,
do.
that's
Us.
depressing.
Oh,
Us.
ruining
It's like
everything.
it's like us keeping these tanks, right? I mean,
Yeah.
not ruining
I don't-
everything.
I don't want to go down the whole metaphorical, philosophical
We
thing.
don't have
that,
to.
like,
We don't have to.
Rich
No,
and Ben
we
and
had
Salem
enough
went
of
in
that
last
No.
week.
Gosh.
I burn
I
out
was
with
like,
it, man.
I'm very-
I said I'm getting out of
I'm
the
burnt- I'm
hobby. This
burnt.
all just feels very
You're
unethical
too
now,
young to
so.
say you're burnt out on things already.
I'm burnt out. I get burnt out on topics as I go so deep on them. This
I
is,
get that passion.
Exhausted.
Yeah, I'll come back in 3 weeks.
I'm
to it.
exhausted from being so passionate.
Monster.
Yeah, I need a yeah. Look, I'm collecting them.
Monster or Red
There's
Bull.
my consumption for the week.
Monster or Red Bull. I'm not.
Well,
an
Red Bull
I'm
stopped
not an
working.
energy drink guy at all.
Red Bull stopped working, so my friends were like, "You have to try Monster," and then I did. And
I don't know
A,
if
it tastes
ha-
way better, and B, it has more caffeine, and C, the Monster imports have stickers, so like that's cool. Like that's a genius. Like you guys, TSA should incorporate free TSA stickers somewhere on a package so people can do this. Free advertising.
I'll talk to
It's
the market.
Genius.
I'll talk to the marketing guy.
It makes sense.
There you go.
We should do it too. We should. Yeah. What are we,
You're
what are we
like
doing?
You're like, wait,
We're reef builders. Yeah.
we're reef builders.
So Monster. Yeah.
These.
Mm.
Oh yeah. What we should.
There you
we
go.
should bring some. We should bring some to Aquashella.
We'll bring stickers to Aquashella. Come see me. I will have them warm and ready from my back pocket.
Oh, nice.
It's
Lucky
from the heat
day.
of my body. From the heat of my body, guys. Buttocks are warm.
Lucky day.
All right. Before we derail too much more, Blaine, I want to say thank you for coming on tonight. I really appreciate it. I feel like it was just like, just like shooting the shiz with a good reefing friend,
Typical guys being dudes. You know what I mean?
Yeah. less F-bombs than reef recap, so we're good with that.
I have a sailor's mouth too. I'll be honest. I worked on the high seas for a short stint of my life, and I'm shocked that I didn't throw a couple F-bombs around. But
I regulated
Proud on
myself extensively.
Good
You're
man.
just tired from finals and everything, so
Yeah.
that too.
also
Yeah,
Well,
say
I- I wanna-
congratulations, Stephen.
I want to say
Salem's
thank you again for having me on. It's been a lot of fun. Hopefully I can come back on at some point. Hopefully everyone enjoys the episode. I know we kind of got a little crazy at some points, but no, I've I've been watching Reef Builders for a long, long time. Remy and I have been friends for a long time now at this point. I just want to say big shout out to you, Remy, Salem, the whole team. You know, you guys keeping this whole thing going. I love seeing it. You know, obviously I'm doing the same thing over at Top Shelf, trying to get their whole content kind of rolling and getting going. But no, I just want to say kudos to you guys for everything you're doing in the light of all the situations past couple of years. You know, shout out to you guys, shout out to Windsor, everybody, whole team. You know, love you guys a ton. It's been awesome to be able to come and be on, you know, a Reef Builders video previously, and then to now do this. It really is a dream come true. It seriously is. I'll never forget when I met Jake the first time, and now, you know, it's kind of one of those things like I'll never forget when I, you know, did reef therapy for the first time. So big shout out to you guys. Thank you again for having me on.
This has been
Likewise.
so wholesome. There's been so many wholesome moments.
You know what? I'm a wholesome guy, right? Like I will say, you know, one last thing before I get out of here. I'm very lucky. I came from Reno, Nevada, middle of nowhere, desert. Like I just like loved fish tanks, and like seriously, if you got a passion, like just follow it, and like it you know, don't chase money. Like I chased money for a while for my job, and sure I made money, but I wasn't super happy and passionate about it. And like as of like, I'm not kidding, like the last year or so, like I've like unlocked a new me, and it's been so awesome. Like it's been really great to like kind of really come into my own, and like, no, I love this hobby. I'm very lucky to have the job I have. Shout out to Top Shelf, Alex, Kevin, Steven, everybody. You know, thank you guys for bringing me on. You know, it's been a huge blessing to me. So no, it is a wholesome moment for me, honestly, because like it is very cool to be here in this, like, it's like, you know, in the moments, like the surreal thing where you're like, oh, wow, like I'm really here doing the thing, you know. But no, thanks again. It's been awesome.
Shout out Larry.
Bill?
Dude, shout out Larry Official. You know what I mean? That guy was a legend.
Larry Official.
I never knew his last name, so I always called him Larry Official to this day. And Larry, if you're watching, I don't know, you might not be, but Larry, if you're watching, you're the man. Go.
Oh, he's probably watching.
Oh no, come on, dude.
No, don't do that to him. We had hope. It was such a great story.
It was.
Dude, we could see Larry commenting. It's like, oh, we reconnect.
Yeah. Now he's
they
gonna
do
be
a video
like, he
there.
was gonna comment until Remy made the whole joke
Oh
about
my
me kicking the
God,
bucket.
You jinxed the whole thing, Remy.
Just guessing that he's probably a senior
dude.
citizen.
I'm
you know,
knocking
in
on
that
wood. I
area.
have a wooden desk.
to Larry.
To Larry, let's go. All right,
Pour
Blaine.
one
Well,
out.
thank you for coming on tonight. We really appreciate it. I want to thank ICP Analysis for powering reef therapy again. Hashtag what's in your water in the comment section if you want a chance at a freshwater and a saltwater test. I just sent one in. I'm waiting my results, and then I will send them to Salem, and he will tell me what is wrong with my tank. So that's where I'm at in life. Thanks, guys. We'll see you in the next one. Bye-bye.
Goodbye.
Bye, guys.